JSIL. B presents Prosecutorial Misconduct, presented by Dr. Jonah Sanders.
Today we're going to study prosecutorial misconduct. Module 1. Introduction to Prosecutorial Misconduct. Description. As a legal scholar, I believe it is essential to critically examine the concept of prosecutorial misconduct. Understanding its nuances and implications within the legal system not only enriches our comprehension of justice, but also underscores the ethical responsibilities inherent in the prosecutorial role. In this exploration, I will define prosecutorial misconduct, distinguish it from mere legal errors, and highlight its significance in safeguarding the rights of the accused. Defining prosecutorial misconduct. Prosecutorial misconduct refers to inappropriate or illegal actions taken by a prosecutor in the course of their duties. This can include the withholding of exculpatory evidence, presenting false evidence, making inflammatory statements during trial, and engaging in conflicts of interest. It is crucial to differentiate prosecutorial misconduct from legal errors, which may occur during trial proceedings but do not necessarily stem from unethical behavior. While legal errors can often be rectified through appeals and retrials, prosecutorial misconduct can fundamentally undermine the integrity of the justice system, leading to wrongful convictions and a lack of public trust. Historical context of prosecutorial misconduct. Historically, prosecutorial misconduct has evolved significantly within U.S. law. In the early days of the American legal system, there were fewer formal guidelines governing prosecutorial behavior. However, as society's understanding of justice and due process has progressed, so too has the recognition of the importance of ethical conduct by prosecutors. Landmark cases such as Brady v. Maryland 1963 established the obligation of prosecutors to disclose exculpatory evidence, reinforcing the idea that justice should be served fairly. Over the decades, the definition of prosecutorial misconduct has expanded, reflecting changes in societal norms and legal standards. Constitutional protections implicated. Several constitutional protections are often implicated in cases of prosecutorial misconduct, primarily those outlined in the Sixth Amendment and the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. The Sixth Amendment guarantees the accused the right to a fair trial, which is fundamentally compromised when a prosecutor engages in misconduct. The Due Process Clause further emphasizes the necessity of fairness in legal proceedings, underscoring that every defendant is entitled to a trial free from bias, coercion, or improper influences. These protections serve as a framework within which to assess prosecutorial conduct, ensuring that the rights of the accused are not merely theoretical but are actively upheld in practice. Understanding the causes of prosecutorial misconduct. The occurrence of prosecutorial misconduct can often be traced to systemic pressures within the legal framework. Prosecutors may face immense pressure to secure convictions, leading them to prioritize winning cases over ethical considerations. The adversarial nature of the criminal justice system can foster an environment where the ends are seen to justify the means, resulting in misconduct that ranges from aggressive tactics to outright ethical violations. Additionally, the lack of accountability and oversight within prosecutorial offices can contribute to a culture where misconduct is overlooked or inadequately addressed. High-profile case examples. Several high-profile cases have brought attention to the pervasive issue of prosecutorial misconduct. For instance, the case of Michael Morton illustrates the devastating impact of a prosecutor's failure to disclose exculpatory evidence, which led to Morton's wrongful conviction for nearly 25 years. Similarly, the wrongful convictions of the Duke lacrosse players in 2006 highlighted how a prosecutor's unethical behavior can skew public perception and destroy lives. These cases underscore the urgent need for reforms that enhance transparency and accountability in prosecutorial practices. In conclusion, prosecutorial misconduct remains a critical issue within the legal landscape. Understanding its definition, historical context, and implications for constitutional protections is essential for fostering a justice system that truly serves all individuals fairly. By examining the systemic pressures that contribute to misconduct and acknowledging the high-profile cases that have drawn attention to these issues, we can better advocate for necessary reforms. As a legal scholar, I am committed to advancing the discourse on prosecutorial ethics and ensuring that the pursuit of justice remains the paramount goal of our legal system. Through continued education, research, and advocacy, we can work towards a future where prosecutorial misconduct is neither tolerated nor overlooked, but actively addressed to uphold the integrity of the law. Module 2. Types of prosecutorial misconduct. Description. As I delve into the multifaceted realm of prosecutorial misconduct, it becomes apparent that its manifestations are varied and significant. Understanding these forms of misconduct is crucial for recognizing the potential consequences they carry for both the accused and the integrity of the judicial system. In this discussion, I will categorize the types of prosecutorial misconduct, explore their implications, and provide real-world examples to illustrate each category. Categories of misconduct. Prosecutorial misconduct can be broadly categorized into four main types: improper withholding of evidence, improper argument, false testimony, and prejudicial statements. 1. Improper withholding of evidence. This type of misconduct occurs when a prosecutor fails to disclose exculpatory evidence information that could potentially exonerate the defendant. Such actions not only violate ethical obligations but also compromise the defendant's right to a fair trial. The implications of withholding evidence can be dire, often resulting in wrongful convictions. 2. Improper argument. This form of misconduct involves prosecutors making inappropriate arguments during trial, which may include presenting evidence that is irrelevant or inflammatory. Improper arguments can lead to jury bias and skew the perception of the evidence presented, undermining the fairness of the trial process. 3. False testimony. When a prosecutor knowingly presents false testimony, it constitutes one of the most egregious forms of misconduct. This can involve either directly lying or allowing witnesses to provide false statements without correction. The impact of false testimony is profound, as it not only misleads the jury but also erodes public confidence in the justice system. 4. Prejudicial statements. Prosecutors may make prejudicial statements to the media or during court proceedings that can taint the jury's perception of the defendant. Such statements can create a bias against the accused, compromising their right to a fair trial. Misconduct during different trial phases. Prosecutorial misconduct can occur at various stages of the judicial process or pre-trial. During this phase, misconduct may involve the improper withholding of evidence or making prejudicial statements that can shape public opinion and affect jury selection. During trial. Misconduct in this phase often manifests as improper arguments or false testimony, significantly influencing the trial's outcome. Post-conviction. Even after a conviction, prosecutorial misconduct can emerge through the failure to address wrongful convictions or the suppression of evidence that may indicate innocence. The significance of fabricating or suppressing evidence. The act of fabricating or suppressing evidence strikes at the very heart of due process. Such misconduct not only undermines the accused's right to a fair trial but also threatens the fundamental principles of justice. Courts have consistently held that due process violations resulting from prosecutorial misconduct warrant serious scrutiny, and in many cases lead to the reversal of convictions. The implications of these actions extend beyond individual cases, eroding public trust in the legal system as a whole. In world examples. To illustrate these forms of misconduct, I can point to several notable cases. Improper withholding of evidence in the case of Brady v. Maryland, 1963. The Supreme Court ruled that the prosecution's failure to disclose exculpatory evidence constituted a violation of due process, resulting in a landmark decision that established the obligation of prosecutors to share such evidence. Improper argument. The prosecutor's statement in the trial of the Duke lacrosse players 2006 serves as an example where inflammatory rhetoric and improper arguments contributed to a biased public narrative and the eventual dismissal of charges. False testimony. The Michael Morton case illustrates how a prosecutor's reliance on false testimony can lead to devastating consequences, including wrongful imprisonment for nearly 25 years. Prejudicial statements. In the United States v. Simpson 1995 trial, public statements made by the prosecution were criticized for creating a prejudicial environment that influenced jury perceptions. Legal precedent. Courts have addressed various types of prosecutorial misconduct in numerous rulings. The overarching principle that emerges is the necessity of maintaining the integrity of the judicial process. When prosecutors overstep their bounds, courts often respond with measures that can include overturning convictions, imposing sanctions, or calling for disciplinary actions against offending prosecutors. Conclusion. In conclusion, the various types of prosecutorial misconduct serve as a stark reminder of the ethical responsibilities borne by those in the legal profession. The consequences of such misconduct can be profound, affecting not only individual cases but also the overall trust in the justice system. As we continue to examine and address these issues, it is imperative that we advocate for transparency and accountability within prosecutorial practices to ensure that justice is upheld for all. Module 3. Ethical obligations of prosecutors. Description. As I explore the ethical obligations that govern prosecutorial behavior, it becomes clear that prosecutors play a unique and critical role in the justice system. They are entrusted not only with prosecuting crimes but also with upholding the principles of fairness and justice. This discussion will examine the ethical framework that guides their conduct, including the American Bar Association's Model Rules of Professional Conduct, the balancing act between seeking justice and securing convictions, and the potential consequences of ethical violations. ABA Model Rules of Professional Conduct. The American Bar Association's Model Rules of Professional Conduct provide the foundational ethical guidelines for all lawyers, including prosecutors. These rules emphasize that a prosecutor's primary duty is not to secure convictions, but to ensure that justice is served. The Model Rule 3.8 is particularly relevant, as it outlines the specific responsibilities of prosecutors. This includes the obligation to refrain from prosecuting charges that are not supported by probable cause, to disclose evidence that might exonerate the defendant, and to ensure that the defendant's legal rights are protected. From an academic perspective, I view these rules as essential safeguards that promote fairness in the legal process. They serve as a reminder that the power wielded by prosecutors must be exercised with care and integrity. Duty to seek justice, not just convictions. A central ethical obligation of prosecutors is their duty to seek justice, which transcends the adversarial nature of their role. This principle means that while prosecutors represent the state in criminal cases, their ultimate goal is not simply to win, but to ensure that the trial is fair, the law is upheld, and the guilty are convicted based on proper evidence. Prosecutors must balance their ethical responsibilities with their adversarial role, which can be challenging in high-profile cases or situations where public pressure demands a conviction. In my view, this ethical duty distinguishes prosecutors from other legal professionals, as they must constantly navigate between their role as advocates and their commitment to upholding justice. This balance is crucial for maintaining the integrity of the justice system. Internal ethics guidelines. While the ABA Model Rules provide a broad ethical framework, internal ethics guidelines within prosecutors' offices offer more specific directives tailored to the daily realities of prosecution. These internal codes of conduct are critical in addressing situations unique to the prosecutor's role, such as handling evidence, witness management, and making charging decisions. Prosecutors' offices often conduct training and ongoing professional development to help their staff understand and apply these guidelines effectively. I believe these internal measures, when rigorously enforced, can act as a first line of defense against unethical behavior. They also create a culture of accountability within the office, promoting ethical decision-making from the ground up. Consequences of violating ethical standards. Prosecutors who violate ethical standards face significant consequences, ranging from disbarment to public censure and, in extreme cases, criminal liability. Disbarment is the most severe professional penalty, effectively ending a prosecutor's legal career. Public censure involves a formal reprimand that can damage the prosecutor's reputation, while criminal liability can result if misconduct rises to the level of illegal activity, such as the suppression of evidence or fabrication of testimony. These consequences are essential for maintaining public trust in the justice system. From my perspective, they underscore the seriousness of the ethical responsibilities placed on prosecutors and serve as a deterrent to misconduct. State vs. Federal ethical obligations. There are notable differences in ethical obligations between state and federal prosecutors. While both are bound by the AB's model rules and state bar regulations, federal prosecutors operate under the additional oversight of the Department of Justice's internal guidelines. These include the U.S. Attorney's Manual, which provides detailed procedures for the conduct of federal prosecutors, particularly in areas such as plea bargaining and charging decisions. State prosecutors, on the other hand, are often subject to a more localized set of ethical rules, which may vary significantly from one jurisdiction to another. In analyzing these differences, I find that while federal prosecutors may face more stringent oversight due to the national scope of their work, state prosecutors often work under intense local scrutiny, particularly in politically charged cases. Both must navigate complex ethical landscapes, but the nuances of their obligations can differ depending on the jurisdiction in which they operate. In conclusion, the ethical obligations of prosecutors are a critical aspect of their role in the justice system. Guided by the ABA's Model Rules of Professional Conduct and internal ethics guidelines, prosecutors must balance their adversarial duties with their responsibility to seek justice. Violations of these ethical standards can result in severe professional and legal consequences, and there are distinct differences in the ethical frameworks governing state and federal prosecution. As I reflect on these issues, it becomes clear that maintaining high ethical standards is essential for preserving the integrity of the justice system and ensuring that prosecutors fulfill their role as guardians of justice. Module 4. Consequences of Prosecutorial Misconduct. Description. As I delve deeper into the implications of prosecutorial misconduct, it becomes increasingly clear that its consequences are far-reaching, affecting individuals, the legal system, and society as a whole. In this discussion, I will examine the individual impact of misconduct, its societal ramifications, the legal repercussions for verdicts, and the protection afforded to prosecutors under the doctrine of prosecutorial immunity. Individual impact. The consequences of prosecutorial misconduct on individuals can be devastating. One of the most severe outcomes is wrongful conviction, where innocent individuals are convicted due to the unethical actions of prosecutors. This not only leads to the loss of liberty but also subjects victims to the harsh realities of incarceration, often for years or even decades. The trauma associated with wrongful convictions extends beyond mere imprisonment. It can lead to reputational damage that affects family, friendships, and future employment opportunities. I find it troubling that many individuals exonerated after years of wrongful incarceration face an uphill battle to rebuild their lives in the wake of such profound injustice. Societal consequences. On a broader scale, prosecutorial misconduct contributes to an erosion of trust in the legal system. When the public perceives that prosecutors are engaging in unethical behavior, it undermines the rule of law and the fundamental principles of justice. This lack of confidence can deter individuals from engaging with the legal system, whether as jurors, witnesses, or defendants. The long-term societal consequences are troubling, as communities may become less willing to cooperate with law enforcement, further complicating the pursuit of justice. Legal repercussions. Prosecutorial misconduct can also lead to significant legal repercussions, including overturned verdicts, retrials, and costly appeals. When misconduct is identified, courts may vacate convictions, which often results in retrials that impose substantial financial burdens on both the legal system and taxpayers. The costly appeals process can prolong the quest for justice, creating a backlog in the judicial system and consuming resources that could be better utilized elsewhere. These legal consequences highlight the inefficiencies that arise from prosecutorial misconduct, ultimately detracting from the core mission of delivering justice. Analysis of studies on misconduct. Research indicates that prosecutorial misconduct is not merely an isolated issue but a systemic problem that can have long-term consequences for communities. Studies reveal that misconduct is often prevalent in certain jurisdictions, leading to patterns of wrongful convictions and a cycle of injustice. These findings underscore the importance of addressing prosecutorial misconduct to safeguard communities and ensure that the legal system functions fairly and effectively. Prosecutorial immunity. A particularly troubling aspect of prosecutorial misconduct is the concept of prosecutorial immunity, which often shields prosecutors from personal liability despite engaging in unethical behavior. This doctrine, designed to allow prosecutors to perform their duties without fear of personal consequences, can inadvertently lead to a lack of accountability. While I understand the need for legal protections for prosecutors, the blanket immunity can create a culture where misconduct goes unpunished, further perpetuating the cycle of injustice. The lack of repercussions can also embolden unethical behavior, as prosecutors may feel insulated from the consequences of their actions. Conclusion. In conclusion, the consequences of prosecutorial misconduct extend far beyond individual cases, impacting the legal system and society at large. The individual effects of wrongful convictions and reputational damage are profound, while the societal implications include a decline in trust in the legal system and an erosion of the rule of law. Additionally, the legal repercussions of misconduct, including overturned verdicts and costly appeals, underscore the inefficiencies it introduces into the judicial process. As I continue to examine these issues, I am compelled to advocate for reforms that address prosecutorial misconduct and promote accountability within the legal profession. Only through such efforts can we hope to restore faith in our justice system and ensure that it serves all members of society fairly and equitably. Module 5. Brady violations and the duty to disclose. Description. As I delve into the crucial topic of prosecutorial disclosure obligations, the landmark case of Brady v. Maryland 1963 stands out as a pivotal moment in legal history. This case not only shaped the landscape of prosecutorial responsibilities but also underscored the significance of ensuring that justice is served through fair trial principles. In this discussion, I will examine the implications of the Brady ruling, define what constitutes Brady material, distinguish between material and immaterial evidence, and explore the consequences of Brady violations for both prosecutors and defendants. Additionally, I will highlight landmark cases that have led to significant legal reforms as a result of Brady violations. The ruling in Brady v. Maryland. The ruling in Brady v. Maryland established the principle that the prosecution has an ethical and legal duty to disclose exculpatory evidence to the defense. In this case, the Supreme Court held that withholding evidence favorable to the accused constitutes a violation of due process under the 14th Amendment. This ruling was monumental in reinforcing the idea that the prosecution must not only seek justice but also ensure that defendants have access to evidence that could potentially exonerate them or mitigate their punishment. Defining Brady material. Brady material refers to any evidence that is exculpatory in nature or could otherwise mitigate the severity of a defendant's sentence. This includes not only direct evidence that supports a defendant's innocence, but also evidence that may cast doubt on the credibility of prosecution witnesses or suggest alternative explanations for the alleged crime. I find it critical to emphasize that the duty to disclose extends beyond obvious exculpatory evidence. Prosecutors must consider the potential impact of any evidence on a defendant's case. Material vs. immaterial evidence. In making disclosure decisions, it is essential to differentiate between material and immaterial evidence. Material evidence is information that could reasonably affect the outcome of a trial. It holds potential significance in the context of the case. In contrast, immaterial evidence, while perhaps interesting or informative, does not have the potential to influence the verdict or sentencing. Understanding this distinction is vital for ensuring that prosecutors uphold their duty to disclose evidence that genuinely affects the integrity of the trial. Consequences of Brady violations. The consequences of Brady violations can be severe for both prosecutors and defendants. For defendants, the failure to disclose exculpatory evidence can lead to wrongful convictions, resulting in lost freedom, reputational harm, and emotional distress. From a prosecutorial standpoint, violations can lead to the reversal of convictions, legal sanctions, and damage to the prosecutor's reputation. In my view, these consequences highlight the critical importance of upholding ethical standards within the prosecutorial process. In landmark cases and legal reforms. Several landmark cases illustrate the significant legal reforms that can arise from Brady violations. One notable example is the Michael Morton case, where crucial evidence was withheld by the prosecution, leading to Morton's wrongful conviction for nearly 25 years. This case brought national attention to the need for reform in prosecutorial practices, ultimately resulting in legislative changes aimed at improving the transparency and accountability of prosecutorial disclosure obligations. Such cases serve as powerful reminders of the ongoing need to enforce Brady principles to protect the integrity of the justice system. In conclusion, the duty of prosecutors to disclose exculpatory evidence, as established in Brady v. Maryland, is fundamental to ensuring fair trials and upholding the principles of justice. Understanding what constitutes Brady material, distinguishing between material and immaterial evidence, and recognizing the consequences of Brady violations are all essential for maintaining the integrity of the legal process. As I continue to engage with these important issues, I feel a strong commitment to advocating for reforms that enhance transparency and accountability within the prosecutorial system. By doing so, we can help ensure that the justice system serves all individuals fairly and equitably, safeguarding the rights of the accused while promoting the pursuit of truth. Module 6. Improper statements in court description. As I reflect on the role of prosecutors in the courtroom, it becomes increasingly clear that the integrity of legal proceedings can be significantly compromised by improper statements and tactics. The potential for these remarks to lead to unfair trials is alarming and necessitates a closer examination. In this discussion, I will review examples of inflammatory statements made during trial, explore the distinction between zealous advocacy and improper comments, analyze judicial remedies for these issues, discuss notable cases where improper statements led to overturned convictions, and outline the ethical standards that govern prosecutorial conduct in the courtroom. Examples of inflammatory statements. Prosecutors hold a significant responsibility to present evidence and arguments fairly and accurately. However, there are instances where they resort to inflammatory statements or mischaracterizations during opening or closing arguments. For example, a prosecutor may describe a defendant as dangerous or evil, attempting to paint a biased picture that could unduly influence the jury's perception. Such remarks can evoke strong emotions and create an environment where rational deliberation is hindered. I find it troubling when legal professionals prioritize persuasive rhetoric over the factual basis of a case, as this undermines the core principles of justice. The line between zealous advocacy and improper statements. The line between zealous advocacy and improper statements is often blurred. Prosecutors are expected to advocate vigorously for their cases, but they must do so within ethical and legal boundaries. While it is acceptable for prosecutors to highlight the evidence against the defendant, remarks that appeal to the jury's emotions rather than the facts can cross into improper territory. For instance, asserting that the defendant deserves the harshest punishment, without solid evidential backing can prejudice a jury against the accused. I believe it is crucial for legal practitioners to strike a balance between passionate advocacy and ethical responsibility to uphold the integrity of the judicial process. Judicial remedies for improper comments. When improper prosecutorial comments occur, judicial remedies are essential to mitigate their impact on the trial's outcome. Courts have several options, including declaring mistrials, issuing curative instructions to the jury, or allowing for appeals based on prosecutorial misconduct. Mistrials may be declared when improper remarks are so prejudicial that they cannot be remedied, while curative instructions aim to guide jurors back to a fair consideration of the evidence. The appeals process can serve as a further recourse for defendants seeking justice in the aftermath of improper statements. As I explore these remedies, it is evident that they are crucial for preserving the integrity of the legal process. Notable cases of overturned convictions. There are several notable cases where improper statements have led to overturned convictions. One example is the Duke Lacrosse case, where the prosecutor made inflammatory comments that mischaracterized the evidence and shaped public opinion, ultimately resulting in the dismissal of charges. Another significant case is State v. Hinton, where the prosecutor's improper remarks during closing arguments led to a conviction that was later overturned by the Alabama Supreme Court. These instances serve as stark reminders of the potential for prosecutorial misconduct to derail the pursuit of justice and emphasize the need for accountability in the courtroom. Ethical standards governing courtroom conduct. Ethical standards play a vital role in regulating courtroom conduct by prosecutors. The American Bar Association's Model Rules of Professional Conduct provide guidance on maintaining the integrity of legal proceedings, emphasizing that prosecutors should seek justice, not merely convictions. These standards require prosecutors to refrain from making improper comments or engaging in tactics that could compromise the fairness of the trial. I believe that adherence to these ethical guidelines is essential for fostering public trust in the legal system and ensuring that justice is served. In conclusion, improper statements in court represent a significant challenge to the fairness of trials and the integrity of the judicial process. The examples of inflammatory remarks, the distinction between zealous advocacy and improper comments, and the judicial remedies available to address these issues are all critical components of understanding prosecutorial conduct. Notable cases that highlight the repercussions of improper statements further underscore the need for ethical standards that govern courtroom behavior. As I continue to engage with these important topics, I feel a strong commitment to advocating for reforms that promote accountability and uphold the principles of justice within the prosecutorial system. Only by ensuring that prosecutors adhere to ethical guidelines can we hope to preserve the integrity of our legal system and protect the rights of all individuals involved in the judicial process. Module 7. Misuse of expert witnesses. Description. In my exploration of prosecutorial conduct, one of the most concerning areas is the misuse of expert witnesses. Expert testimony plays a critical role in the judicial process, particularly in complex cases involving forensic science, medical evidence, or specialized knowledge. However, when prosecutors misuse expert witnesses, the potential for injustice increases significantly. In this discussion, I will examine the role of expert witnesses in trials, common ways prosecutors may misuse their testimony, notable case studies highlighting these issues, ethical guidelines for using expert witnesses, and available legal recourse when such testimonies isn't properly utilized. The role of expert witnesses. Expert witnesses are essential in trials, as they provide specialized knowledge that assists the jury in understanding complex evidence. Their testimony can help clarify intricate scientific principles or medical diagnoses that are beyond the comprehension of laypersons. In cases involving forensic science, for example, expert witnesses can explain DNA evidence, fingerprint analysis, or toxicology results. I find that the credibility and reliability of expert testimony can significantly influence the outcome of a case, making the ethical use of such testimony paramount to the pursuit of justice. Common misuses of expert testimony. Despite their critical role, there are common ways in which prosecutors may misuse expert testimony to gain an unfair advantage. Selective presentation. Prosecutors may selectively present expert testimony, highlighting only those aspects that support their case while ignoring contradictory evidence or alternative interpretations. This cherry-picking of information can skew the jury's understanding and lead to an unjust verdict. Coaching experts. In some instances, prosecutors may coach expert witnesses on how to present their findings to align with the prosecution's narrative. This manipulation compromises the integrity of the expert's testimony and undermines the objectivity that is expected from experts. Pressuring experts. Pressuring experts. Prosecutors may exert pressure on experts to conform to specific viewpoints or findings, compromising the independent nature of their testimony. This pressure can lead to biased opinions that do not accurately reflect the evidence. Case studies of misuse. Several high-profile cases illustrate how the misuse of expert testimony can lead to prosecutorial misconduct. The McMartin's preschool case. This notorious case involved allegations of child abuse based on questionable forensic evidence and expert testimony. The prosecution relied heavily on expert witnesses who presented dubious claims about the reliability of children's testimony, resulting in wrongful convictions and a lengthy legal battle. The use of junk science cases such as Cameron Todd Willingham highlight the dangers of relying on flawed forensic science. Prosecutors utilized fire investigation experts who employed discredited techniques to assert that Willingham intentionally set fire to his home, leading to his wrongful execution. The reliance on such junk science exemplifies the dire consequences of expert testimony misuse for prosecutorial gain. Guidelines for ethical use of expert witnesses. To mitigate the risks associated with expert testimony, there are ethical guidelines that govern its use in criminal cases. The American Bar Association provides standards that emphasize the necessity for expert witnesses to present objective, scientifically valid, and unbiased testimony. Prosecutors are expected to ensure that their experts adhere to these guidelines, promoting transparency and accountability. I believe that following these standards is crucial for maintaining the integrity of the legal process and ensuring that justice is served. Legal recourse for improper use. When expert witness testimony is improperly used, defendants have several avenues for legal recourse. They may file motions to suppress the expert testimony, arguing that it does not meet the standards of admissibility or reliability. Additionally, if improper testimony has contributed to a wrongful conviction, defendants can seek post-conviction relief or file appeals based on prosecutorial misconduct. Courts can evaluate the validity of the expert testimony and its impact on the verdict, potentially leading to retrials or the reversal of convictions. This legal framework is essential for addressing the injustices that arise from the misuse of expert witnesses. Conclusion. In conclusion, the misuse of expert witnesses poses a significant threat to the integrity of the judicial process. The critical role of expert testimony in complex cases underscores the need for ethical standards and responsible use by prosecutors. By examining common misuses, notable case studies, and guidelines for ethical conduct, we can better understand the challenges posed by expert testimony in the courtroom. As I continue to engage with these issues, I am compelled to advocate for reforms that promote accountability and ensure that expert witnesses serve the interests of justice rather than the interests of prosecution. Only through these efforts can we hope to maintain public confidence in the legal system and protect the rights of individuals facing criminal charges. Module 8. Coercion and Witness Manipulation. Description. In my investigation into prosecutorial misconduct, one of the most troubling aspects is the coercion and manipulation of witnesses. The integrity of witness testimony is vital to ensuring justice, yet there are numerous instances where prosecutors resort to unethical tactics to secure testimony that can influence the outcome of a case. In this discussion, I will define witness coercion and manipulation, explore the improper tactics used by prosecutors, examine legal protections for witnesses, review notable cases of wrongful convictions stemming from witness manipulation, and analyze the dynamics of police-prosecutor collaboration in this context. Definition of witness coercion and manipulation. Witness coercion and manipulation refer to tactics employed by prosecutors or law enforcement to exert undue pressure on witnesses to secure testimony that may not reflect the truth. Coercion involves using threats or intimidation to force a witness to provide testimony or refrain from dissenting. Manipulation, on the other hand, may include leading questions, misrepresentations, or promises of favorable treatment in exchange for testimony. I find that both practices undermine the integrity of the judicial process and raise serious ethical concerns about the pursuit of justice. Improper use of plea deals and threats. One of the most concerning tactics employed by prosecutors is the improper use of plea deals. In high-pressure situations, prosecutors may offer reduced sentences or other incentives to witnesses in exchange for their testimony. While plea bargaining is a common legal practice, it becomes problematic when used to coerce witnesses into providing testimony that is not truthful. Additionally, prosecutors may threaten witnesses with harsher penalties if they do not cooperate. This creates an environment of fear, where witnesses feel compelled to comply, regardless of their knowledge of the truth. These tactics can lead to a distorted narrative that may mislead juries and contribute to wrongful convictions. Legal protections for witnesses. Legal protections exist to safeguard witnesses from coercion and intimidation, reflecting the judicial system's acknowledgement of the potential for misconduct. Courts generally recognize that witnesses should not be subject to undue influence when providing testimony. For instance, subpoena power allows courts to compel witnesses to testify, ensuring they cannot be easily intimidated or coerced by outside parties. When allegations of coercion arise, courts have mechanisms in place to investigate and address these claims. Witnesses can report coercion to the court, which may initiate inquiries or hold hearings to assess the validity of the claims. However, the effectiveness of these protections often hinges on the willingness of witnesses to come forward, which can be challenging in a coercive environment. Notable cases of witness manipulation. Several high-profile cases exemplify how witness manipulation can lead to wrongful convictions. The case of David Kami was wrongfully convicted of murdering his wife and children, partly due to witness testimony obtained under coercive circumstances. Witnesses were threatened with charges if they did not cooperate with the prosecution, leading to flawed testimony that contributed to Kami's conviction. He spent years in prison before being exonerated. The Duke Lacrosse case. In this infamous case, witnesses were manipulated and pressured to support the prosecution's narrative. The reliance on questionable witness testimony coupled with coercive tactics by law enforcement ultimately resulted in the exoneration of the accused athletes and highlighted the dangers of prosecutorial misconduct. Police-prosecutor collaboration. The collaboration between police and prosecutors can exacerbate issues of witness coercion. When law enforcement works closely with prosecutors, there is a risk that ethical boundaries may blur. Prosecutors may depend on police to secure testimony, leading to situations where they overlook or condone coercive tactics. This relationship can create a culture that prioritizes securing convictions over the pursuit of justice, undermining the ethical foundations of the legal system. To address these concerns, checks and balances must be established. Transparency and accountability mechanisms should be implemented to ensure that witness testimony is obtained ethically. For instance, independent oversight bodies could be created to monitor police-prosecutor collaborations and investigate allegations of coercion. In conclusion, coercion and witness manipulation are serious issues that threaten the integrity of the judicial process. The tactics employed by prosecutors, including improper plea deals and threats, can lead to unreliable testimony that distorts the truth and contributes to wrongful convictions. While legal protections exist to safeguard witnesses, the effectiveness of these measures can be undermined by the environment created by coercive practices. As I reflect on these issues, I am compelled to advocate for reforms that promote ethical conduct in witness interactions and enhance oversight of police-prosecutor collaborations. Only by addressing these systemic issues can we work toward a legal system that upholds the principles of justice and protects the rights of all individuals involved. Module 9, Prosecutorial Discretion and Abuse. Description. In examining the critical role of prosecutorial discretion, I find that this concept embodies both the strengths and vulnerabilities of the legal system. Prosecutorial discretion refers to the authority of prosecutors to make decisions regarding the prosecution of criminal cases. This includes the power to decide which charges to file, whether to offer plea deals, and how to conduct the overall strategy of a case. While this discretion is essential for the effective functioning of the legal system, its misuse can lead to grave injustices. Defining prosecutorial discretion. Prosecutorial discretion encompasses various decision-making areas. Charging decisions. Prosecutors have the latitude to determine whether or not to file charges and the severity of those charges. This authority allows them to assess the strength of the evidence and the appropriateness of pursuing a case based on public interest and justice. Plea bargains. The discretion to negotiate plea deals can significantly impact a defendant's future. Prosecutors may decide to offer a reduced sentence in exchange for a guilty plea, which can be both a tool for efficiency and a source of coercion. Case strategy. Prosecutors also shape case strategy, including which evidence to present and how to frame legal arguments. This strategic discretion can influence the jury's perception and ultimately the trial's outcome. Instances of selective prosecution and overcharging. One of the most troubling aspects of prosecutorial discretion is its potential for selective prosecution. This occurs when a prosecutor targets an individual for prosecution based on impermissible factors, such as race, ethnicity, or socioeconomic status. Such selective practices can lead to systemic inequalities within the justice system. Overcharging is another significant concern. This practice involves filing more serious charges than the evidence warrants, often to pressure defendants into accepting plea deals for lesser offenses. The coercive nature of overcharging can lead to individuals accepting pleas for crimes they did not commit, simply to avoid harsher sentences. Factors influencing prosecutorial discretion. Several external factors can heavily influence prosecutorial discretion, complicating the quest for justice. Public pressure. High-profile cases often attract intense media scrutiny, compelling prosecutors to act in ways that satisfy public opinion rather than adhere strictly to legal principles. The fear of public backlash can lead to decisions that prioritize convictions over fairness and media attention. The role of media in shaping narratives can also pressure prosecutors to pursue aggressive strategies. The portrayal of cases can influence public perception and consequently the actions of those tasked with upholding justice. On political considerations. As elected officials, prosecutors may feel compelled to demonstrate their effectiveness through high conviction rates. This can lead to a focus on securing convictions rather than ensuring justice, resulting in policies that favor punitive measures over rehabilitative ones. Legal and ethical limits on prosecutorial discretion. To mitigate the potential for abuse, various legal and ethical limits have been established. Ethical guidelines, such as those from the American Bar Association, underscore the prosecutor's duty to seek justice rather than merely pursue convictions. Additionally, legal standards exist to challenge prosecutorial decisions when they are deemed unjust or discriminatory. However, the effectiveness of these limits is often contingent on the willingness of defendants and their attorneys to contest prosecutorial actions, which can be a daunting task, especially for those lacking resources. Case studies of prosecutorial discretion leading to injustice. Examining specific cases illuminates the consequences of misused prosecutorial discretion. The Michael Morton case. Morton was wrongfully convicted of murdering his wife due in large part to the prosecutor's failure to disclose exculpatory evidence and reliance on misleading testimony. His case highlights the devastating consequences of prosecutorial negligence and the importance of ethical standards. The Central Park 5 case. In this notorious instance, 5 teenagers were wrongfully convicted of assault and rape based on coerced confessions and prosecutorial misconduct. This case exemplifies how selective prosecution and a lack of accountability can lead to profound injustices. Reforms to address abuses of discretion. In light of these issues, calls for reform have grown louder. Initiatives such as increasing transparency in charging decisions and establishing independent review boards can help ensure that prosecutors are held accountable for their actions. Additionally, implementing training programs focused on ethics and responsible discretion can cultivate a culture of accountability within prosecutorial offices. Such reforms can promote a commitment to justice over mere conviction rates, helping restore public trust in the legal system. Conclusion. In conclusion, prosecutorial discretion is a double-edged sword that, while necessary for the effective functioning of the legal system, can lead to significant injustices when misused. The potential for selective prosecution, overcharging, and the influence of public and political pressures highlights the need for robust ethical and legal limits on this discretion. As I reflect on these issues, I am compelled to advocate for reforms that prioritize justice and accountability within prosecutorial practices. By fostering an environment of integrity and transparency, we can work towards a more equitable legal system that upholds the rights and dignity of all individuals. Module 10. Case Studies of Notable Misconduct. Description. As I analyze the complex landscape of prosecutorial misconduct, it is essential to explore landmark cases that exemplify the consequences of such behavior and the subsequent reforms they inspired. Through examining cases like the Duke Lacrosse case, the Central Park 5, and the Michael Morton case, we can gain insights into how misconduct was uncovered, the systemic failures that permitted these injustices, and the lessons learned for future reforms. The Duke Lacrosse case, which erupted in 2006, serves as a striking example of prosecutorial misconduct intertwined with media frenzy and public pressure. In this case, members of the Duke University lacrosse team were accused of raping a stripper. The prosecutor, Mike Nifong, made inflammatory public statements and pursued charges, despite substantial evidence undermining the accuser's credibility. As I reflect on this case, it becomes evident that Nifong's decisions were influenced by public opinion and a desire for a high-profile conviction. Ultimately, the North Carolina State Bar disbarred him for ethical violations, and the charges against the lacrosse players were dismissed. This case underscores the dangers of allowing public sentiment to dictate prosecutorial actions, illustrating the need for strict ethical guidelines. The Central Park 5. The Central Park 5 case is perhaps one of the most egregious examples of prosecutorial misconduct in U.S. history. In 1989, 5 Black and Latino teenagers were wrongfully convicted of assaulting and raping a jogger in Central Park. Coerced confessions obtained through aggressive interrogation tactics played a crucial role in their convictions. It was only years later that the true perpetrator, Matias Reyes, confessed and DNA evidence corroborated his involvement, leading to the exoneration of the Central Park Five. This case reveals significant systemic failures, including racial bias, the reliance on unreliable confessions, and a lack of accountability for law enforcement and prosecutors. It serves as a critical reminder of the urgent need for reforms in investigative and prosecutorial practices to prevent such miscarriages of justice. The Michael Morton case. The case of Michael Morton illustrates the catastrophic impact of prosecutorial misconduct on an individual's life. Wrongfully convicted of murdering his wife in 1986, Morton spent nearly 25 years in prison before new DNA evidence exonerated him. The prosecutor's office failed to disclose crucial exculpatory evidence that pointed to Morton's innocence, instead relying on misleading testimony. Morton's exoneration led to significant reforms in Texas, including the establishment of the Michael Morton Act, which mandates the disclosure of evidence favorable to the defense. This case exemplifies how individual tragedies can catalyze systemic change within the legal framework, highlighting the importance of transparency and accountability in prosecutorial practices. Systemic failures and uncovering misconduct. In reviewing these cases, it becomes clear that systemic failures often facilitate prosecutorial misconduct. Issues such as inadequate oversight, insufficient training, and a lack of accountability mechanisms create environments where misconduct can flourish. Courts often address these issues through appeals and post-conviction hearings, but the road to justice was long and fraught with challenges. Lessons learned and reform efforts. The lessons gleaned from these high-profile cases are invaluable. They underscore the need for rigorous ethical standards, improved training for prosecutors, and increased transparency in the justice system. Advocacy groups have played a crucial role in driving reform efforts, pushing for policies that enhance accountability and protect the rights of defendants. Current reform initiatives aim to implement measures such as mandatory training for prosecutors, review boards to oversee prosecutorial decisions, and legislative changes to ensure evidence disclosure. These efforts are essential in preventing future misconduct and restoring public confidence in the justice system. Conclusion. In conclusion, the case studies of the Duke Lacrosse case, the Central Park Five, and the Michael Morton case reveal the profound consequences of prosecutorial misconduct. They highlight the systemic failures that allowed such injustices to occur and emphasize the importance of ongoing reforms. As I reflect on these cases, I am reminded of the critical role that advocacy and accountability play in shaping a more equitable legal system, one that upholds the principles of justice for all individuals, regardless of their circumstances. The path to reform is challenging, but the lessons learned from these cases serve as a guiding light toward a more just future. Module 11. Legal Remedies and Accountability for Misconduct. Description. In my examination of prosecutorial misconduct, it is imperative to understand the legal mechanisms available for addressing such behavior and ensuring accountability. Through various legal remedies, we can begin to address the injustices caused by prosecutorial misconduct and strive for a more equitable legal system. In this discussion, I will explore the avenues for legal recourse, the complexities of prosecutorial immunity, and recent developments aimed at enhancing accountability. Legal remedies for misconduct. Legal remedies for prosecutorial misconduct are essential in seeking justice for individuals who have been wronged. Some key avenues include appeals. When a conviction is believed to be tainted by prosecutorial misconduct, the defendant may file an appeal. This process allows higher courts to review the trial record for any errors that may have affected the verdict. Appeals can be a critical tool for addressing injustices, although they often require substantial legal resources and expertise. Habeas corpus petitions. This legal mechanism permits individuals to challenge the legality of their detention. If a person can demonstrate that their conviction resulted from prosecutorial misconduct, they may seek relief through a habeas corpus petition. This process can lead to overturned convictions and, in some cases, exoneration. Post-conviction relief. Various forms of post-conviction relief exist to correct wrongful convictions, including motions for new trials based on newly discovered evidence of misconduct. These remedies provide an avenue for addressing issues that were not adequately resolved during the initial trial. Misconduct and wrongful conviction exonerations. Prosecutorial misconduct plays a significant role in wrongful conviction exonerations. Many individuals exonerated after serving time in prison have revealed that unethical prosecutorial practices contributed to their wrongful convictions. This highlights the necessity of addressing misconduct not only to seek justice for individuals but also to prevent future injustices within the legal system. Prosecutorial immunity. A contentious aspect of prosecutorial misconduct is the doctrine of prosecutorial immunity. This legal principle originated to protect prosecutors from personal liability when making decisions in the course of their official duties. While the intent behind this immunity is to allow prosecutors to perform their functions without fear of civil suits, it often raises serious concerns regarding accountability. The implications of prosecutorial immunity can be profound, as it can shield prosecutors from repercussions for unethical behavior. Current debates surrounding reform focus on the need to balance the protection of prosecutorial discretion with mechanisms that ensure accountability. This is an area where legal scholars and reform advocates must continue to engage in dialogue in professional and disciplinary actions. In addition to legal remedies, professional and disciplinary actions against prosecutors are vital for maintaining ethical standards within the legal profession. The Bar Association plays a crucial role in overseeing the conduct of attorneys, and sanctions can range from reprimands to disbarment in cases of egregious misconduct. Recent years have seen an increase in disciplinary actions against prosecutors, underscoring a growing recognition of the need for accountability. However, the effectiveness of these measures often depends on the willingness of bar associations to take decisive action in cases of misconduct. Recent developments in accountability. In response to growing concerns about prosecutorial misconduct, recent legislative and judicial developments have aimed to enhance accountability. Some jurisdictions have introduced laws that mandate training for prosecutors on ethical standards and evidence disclosure. Additionally, there have been calls for the establishment of independent review boards to investigate claims of prosecutorial misconduct. Judicial rulings have also started to emphasize the importance of holding prosecutors accountable for their actions, with courts increasingly willing to scrutinize prosecutorial conduct in cases involving wrongful convictions. In conclusion, addressing prosecutorial misconduct requires a multifaceted approach that includes legal remedies, accountability mechanisms, and ongoing reforms. The avenues for appeals, habeas corpus petitions, and post-conviction relief provide essential tools for correcting injustices. Simultaneously, discussions around prosecutorial immunity and disciplinary actions are critical for ensuring ethical conduct within the legal profession. As I continue to explore this topic, I remain hopeful that ongoing reforms and increased accountability will lead to a more just and equitable legal system, safeguarding the rights of all individuals involved in the justice process. Module 12. Preventing Prosecutorial Misconduct Best Practices. Description. As I delve into the critical issue of preventing prosecutorial misconduct, it becomes evident that a proactive approach is essential for upholding ethical standards within the legal system. This discussion focuses on various strategies and reforms designed to mitigate misconduct and enhance the integrity of prosecutorial practices. By implementing best practices, we can foster a culture of accountability and transparency that prioritizes justice over mere convictions. Training and continuing education. One of the most effective ways to prevent prosecutorial misconduct is through comprehensive training and continuing education programs focused on ethics and proper trial conduct. And these programs should be mandatory for all prosecutors, providing them with the knowledge and skills necessary to navigate complex legal and ethical dilemmas. Regular workshops and seminars can help reinforce the importance of ethical standards, promote awareness of potential pitfalls, and encourage open discussions about the challenges prosecutors face in their roles. In my view, fostering a culture of continuous learning not only benefits individual prosecutors but also strengthens the entire justice system by cultivating a more informed and ethically conscious legal community. Role of prosecutorial review boards. The establishment of prosecutorial review boards can play a pivotal role in ensuring accountability within prosecutorial offices. These independent bodies should be responsible for investigating allegations of misconduct and reviewing prosecutorial practices. By providing oversight, these boards can help to identify patterns of unethical behavior and implement corrective measures when necessary. Moreover, internal accountability mechanisms within prosecutorial offices are crucial for addressing misconduct early on. By encouraging self-reporting and creating a culture where ethical behavior is prioritized, these mechanisms can serve as effective deterrents against misconduct. As I reflect on this, I recognize the importance of fostering an environment where prosecutors feel comfortable reporting concerns without fear of retribution. As practices for transparency and evidence handling. Implementing best practices for transparency is essential in promoting ethical behavior among prosecutors. This includes establishing clear protocols for evidence handling and disclosure, ensuring that all relevant evidence, particularly exculpatory information, is shared with the defense. By adopting policies that prioritize transparency, prosecutorial offices can build trust with the community and reduce the likelihood of misconduct. I believe that creating a culture of openness not only protects the rights of defendants but also enhances the credibility of the prosecutorial process. Transparent practices can help demystify the legal system and promote public confidence in its integrity. Policy reforms, open file discovery, and reporting. In discussing strategies for preventing prosecutorial misconduct, I cannot overlook the significance of policy reforms such as open file discovery and mandatory reporting of misconduct. Open file discovery mandates that prosecutors provide the defense with access to all evidence and information pertinent to the case, thereby reducing the potential for withholding exculpatory evidence. This reform is a step toward ensuring a fair trial and reinforcing the principle that justice must prevail over winning a conviction. Additionally, establishing policies that require prosecutors to report instances of misconduct, whether by themselves or their colleagues, can create a culture of accountability. Such reforms not only empower individual prosecutors to uphold ethical standards, but also contribute to systemic change. Cultural shifts in prosecutors' offices. Finally, fostering a cultural shift within prosecutors' offices is vital for prioritizing justice over convictions. This shift involves redefining success not solely as the number of convictions secured, but as the pursuit of fair and just outcomes for all parties involved. By emphasizing the ethical obligations of prosecutors and the importance of justice, offices can create an environment where misconduct is less likely to occur. I believe that engaging in regular discussions about the ethical implications of prosecutorial decisions and prioritizing fairness in case outcomes will significantly contribute to reducing instances of misconduct. In conclusion, preventing prosecutorial misconduct requires a multifaceted approach that encompasses training, oversight, transparency, and cultural change. By implementing best practices such as continuous education, the establishment of review boards, and robust policies for evidence handling and reporting, we can work towards a more ethical and accountable prosecutorial system. As I continue to explore these strategies, I remain committed to advocating for reforms that prioritize justice and protect the rights of all individuals within the legal system. Only through such efforts can we hope to restore public trust and enhance the integrity of the justice process.